Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're not chasing the latest market trends or, decoding some new bit of imperial policy. We are plunging headfirst into something much older.
Yeah, we're going way back. We're talking about the very foundations of civilization, specifically Rome, in the scorching midsummer of AD 74.
And this is a time of just immense social pressure. Success isn't just about how much coin you have in the bank. It's about, column inches and who you marry.
Absolutely. And at that era, for all its, stability under the new Flavian dynasty, it was a fundamentally brutal and transactional place to live, especially if you were an outsider.
An outsider with ambition.
Exactly. Someone ambitious enough to reach for the very top, but always kind of scraping against the rigid social boundaries of the city. A bit like our investigator in this story, Marcus Didius Falco, who's always trying to make a living on the sort of fringes of power.
So we're talking about a Rome where high finance, patrician social climbing, and the cutthroat world of publishing all intersect.
And they intersect with legal force. It's an incredibly complex and layered case.
It really is. And our mission for you, the listener, is to try and synthesize this insanely complex web of motives. We've got a literary ambition, crushing financial pressure, and just pure, raw, familial rage all swirling around this one event.
The event being a murder. The victim is Aurelius Crispus, a man who, well, he thought he could buy his way into respectability.
And he was found dead sometime between mid-July and August 12th of AD 74.
And Falco gets pulled into this monumental mess pretty reluctantly by his friend, the Vigil's inquiry chief, Petronius Longus. And the initial scene, the crime scene, it tells you everything you need to know about the sheer psychological intensity of this crime.
How so?
Chrysippus was found battered to death by some maniac inside his own luxurious Greek library. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't the work of a casual thief.
No, this was personal.
Highly personal, highly visceral, and done with just astonishing rage.
Okay, so let's unpack this victim first, because Chrysippus wasn't just, a successful businessman. He was a kind of economic and social anomaly.
He really was. He was juggling two very distinct, very ambitious careers. He was operating in two different worlds that, they rarely overlapped.
On one side, he was a scroll seller. He ran a place called the Golden Horse Scriptorium.
And on the other, he was a Greek banker with his own trapeza, the Aurelian Bank.
And what's so fascinating here is this social dissonance, the gap between what he was and what he wanted to be.
A gap he deliberately embodied and, tried to exploit. On one hand, he's trying to project this image of a sophisticated patron of literature, a man of letters deserving of all that patrician respect.
But the reality was much grimier.
Much grimier. Many of his authors despised him. They openly called him a swine who fleeced them out of fair compensation.
And the scroll business itself, the Golden Horse, it sounds less like a cultural hub and more like a, industrial operation.
That's a perfect way to put it. It employed 30 scribes, copying texts in what the sources literally call a sweatshop environment. They were all about volume, not prestige.
And location was everything in ancient Rome, right?
Yeah.
Geography was status.
It was everything. And this entire operation was located on the Clivus Publicius, a tough slope, far from the prime real estate.
So not exactly the place you'd expect to find the next Virgil.
Not at all. If you were a serious player, if you were in the league of Virgil or Horace, you bought your scrolls on the Vicus Tuscus. That's where the established high-status sellers like the Socii operated.
So Chrysippus's location, it just screams that his ambition was probably rooted more in, sheer profit and mass production than in any kind of real literary fame.
I think so. And that contrast just defined him completely. You have this busy, low-status, high-output scroll shop at the front, churning out texts.
And then right next door, separated by just a discrete corridor, is his lavish, expensive private house and library.
Which reflected his frantic aspiration to join the very class that his offers served. The scroll shop was the grimy, necessary engine, but the banking, the trapeza, that was the real fuel for his ambition.
So let's talk about that fuel, the Aurelian Bank.
Yeah.
This was his true moneymaker.
No question. His main financial agent was a man named Lucrio, a loyal freedman who handled all the day-to-day stuff. But Falco quickly figures out that Chrysippus arrived in Rome with a, let's say, shady reputation.
He started out years earlier as a shady loan shark.
Exactly. So this Greek banking business was clearly far more lucrative and far less savory in its origins than the publishing house he was using for cover.
And this is where it gets really complicated because Roman law and Greek custom immediately give us our first pool of suspects.
Right. His ex-wife, Lysa, she immediately reveals this highly specific custom of Greek banking that is totally different from typical Roman inheritance.
Okay, what's the custom?
In Greek tradition, the trapeza wasn't just passed down to the son, Diomedes. It was traditionally inherited jointly by the banker's wife and his regular agent.
Wait, his wife and his agent?
His wife and his agent. This is a massive legal complication. It instantly throws primary suspicion onto the two people who stand to gain the most profitable asset.
Lucrio, the loyal agent.
And Lysa, the formidable former wife. They stood to inherit the bulk of the profit and all the power, effectively consolidating the entire operation between just the two of them.
It's our first really powerful financial motive right there.
It is. And if you connect that motive back to the crime scene, the victim was found in the Greek library. This room wasn't just a room, it was a statement. It was vast, designed with 3 tiers of architectural columns, Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian, stacked one on top of the other.
Just pigeonholes stuffed with papyri everywhere.
It was meant to project this image of an intellectual sanctuary, of aristocratic sophistication, and yet it became the site of this extreme, uncontrolled violence.
Let's talk about the method again, because it really does define the killer's state of mind.
The description Falco gets is just horrific. The killer first used a scroll rod up his nose, a savage, intimate, and humiliating act. Falco even calls it the first draft of the murder. And then the killer developed his theme more prettily, which resulted in the severe battering.
That language, developed his theme more prettily, is so chilling. It suggests the act started as a personal humiliation, an attack on his identity as a man of letters, and then it devolved into this prolonged, messy violence.
The primary motive seems to be, as the source says, sheer bloody anger. It suggests a really deep personal betrayal, an explosion.
But here's the bizarre, chilling detail that just complicates that whole profile of a simple rage killing.
The nettle flan.
The nettle flan. After the murder, after this brutal battering, the killer pauses in the lobby of the attached Latin room and steals some nettle flan from the victim's lunch tray.
I mean, who does that? It's so jarring. It's this immediate, cool-headed theft of something utterly trivial right after a crime of monumental, uncontrolled passion. It's almost disassociated.
Exactly. That little detail is a massive psychological marker. If the initial violence was this pure, adrenaline-fueled explosion, that immediate hunger and trivial theft implies a strange, disassociated coolness.
It suggests a killer who instantly shifts gears right back to mundane reality. It kind of eliminates the profile of a suspect who would just flee in a panic.
Right. It implies calculation or maybe a unique form of manic detachment, a complete failure to recognize the gravity of what they just did.
And Falco can use that unique physical detail to eliminate suspects driven purely by adrenaline or fear. It sets up an immediate conflict.
Was the killer enraged in the moment, only to be immediately calm and hungry afterward, suggesting a profoundly unstable personality?
Or was the violence the work of an amateur driven by passion and the theft the mark of someone so used to taking whatever they want that they didn't even register the criminality of it?
It complicates the profile hugely as we move into the players in this financial game.
Indeed. And moving beyond the immediate violence, the financial empire and this very volatile domestic arrangement really come into sharp focus. We have 2 powerful women entangled in Chrysippus' life.
Lysa, the past, and Vibia Marula, the present. They represent different forms of capital and ambition.
And Lysa, the former wife, she is a monumental figure. The sources describe her as nothing less than the maker of men and their businesses. For 30 years, she was the real operational genius behind the Aurelian Bank.
She built it from his shady loan shark beginnings into a major trapeza.
And her ambition was deep, and it was intensely focused on her son, Diomedes. Her goal wasn't just more money for herself. She wanted social respectability. She wanted to entrench Diomedes within the highest echelons of Roman society.
Securing him a prestigious place through marriage.
Exactly. And as the traditional Greek wife, her inheritance was huge, half of the incredibly valuable bank. And we also learned she is immediately planning to remarry Lucrio, the bank's agent and co-heir.
So if they marry, they consolidate total, unassailable control over the whole thing.
It's a powerful financial motive for both of them, even if Lucrio denies it later. And this leads us to the crucial, complex property dealings.
Lysa handed the main, luxurious house over to Vibia as a gift.
Right, but Falco saw immediately this wasn't generosity. It was a high-stakes bribe, essentially.
Hmm.
She needed Vibia's full cooperation to arrange a crucial, prestigious marriage for Diomedes to a relative in Vibia's own patrician family.
So she used the house, the physical symbol of his status, as leverage to secure the marriage, the ultimate symbol of her son's social advancement. That's strategic brilliance.
And you contrast that with Vibia Marula, the current wife. She was young, late 20s, confident, and expensive, married to a man nearly 60.
Their marriage was strictly an economic and social contract, described as an alliance for the improvement of all parties.
It was. Chrysippus paid a huge price, a massive dowry, to acquire Vibia specifically for her family connection. He was buying the social capital necessary for Diomedes' advancement.
But her inheritance was pretty poor compared to Liza's. She only got the less profitable scroll shop, the grimy side of the business.
And she only acquired the luxurious house after that complex conditional negotiation with Lysa. It just confirms that Vibia was essentially a purchased intermediary in this whole social transaction for Diomedes.
Vibia claims she was loyal to him, but she also admits this deep resentment at having been purchased.
And here's where the family drama turns scandalous and volatile. Falco openly speculates on a relationship between Vibia and her stepson Diomedes.
And then, after the murder, Vibia immediately asks Diomedes to remove all his childhood belongings from the house to protect her own reputation.
That's a huge sign of stress, isn't it? And potential guilt. If she's innocent, why the rush to scrub the house of his presence? It's just she knew the connection was scandalous, or maybe she feared that any scrutiny on Diomedes would implicate her too.
And Diomedes himself, the pious son, is the sensitive, passive focus of all this scheming.
He's described as a patron of the goddess Minerva, easily swayed by his mother's grand designs. He stood to inherit only enough for him to live well. His financial future was minor compared to the prestige this arranged marriage was supposed to bring.
And he was constantly drawn back to that house, keeping his old room there, even while living with his mother. He was literally being pulled between his mother's ambition and his father's world.
So you have the financial power couple, Lysa and Lucrio. You have the social lever, Vibia.
Yeah.
And you have the sensitive, passive recipient of all this ambition, Diomedes. Any one of them could have just exploded in rage over a lifetime of this kind of manipulation.
But just as we start to focus on the family, the case throws a massive, brilliant wrench in the works by introducing a deadly literary conspiracy.
And it ties directly back to the banking.
This is where it gets really interesting, because the literary side of the business led directly to a second death, a death that was officially ruled a suicide.
Shortly after Chrysippus's murder, the historian Avienus, one of Chrysippus's contract writers, was found hanged beneath the Probus Bridge.
And Vibia and others, they immediately assumed it was suicide. Crushing financial strain, that sort of thing.
But Falco discovered that Avienus had just paid off a large loan to the Aurelian Bank just days before he died.
That completely contradicts the idea of a desperate man driven by debt. That's a major red flag.
And we learn why. Avienus wasn't writing standard Roman history. His big project was a history of fiduciary transactions since the Augustan period.
A history of financial deals.
Exactly. And this seemingly dry academic topic allowed him to, quote, graze too close to the Aurelian Bank's initial shady operations, the loan shark period.
He found dirt.
He found dirt, evidence of financial malfeasance, possibly illegal dealings on Chrysippus's part.
Okay, let's unpack this blackmail connection because it's a stroke of genius. Avienus wasn't trying to publish the dirt and ruin Chrysippus. He was using it to ensure his own comfort.
He blackmailed Chrysippus for a comfortable retainer and immunity from ever having to actually finish his book.
So it was hush money, disguised as patronage. He got paid well to not publish.
For a while. But Chrysippus eventually lost patience, maybe because of the massive cash flow needed for Diomedes' new social campaign, or maybe he was just tired of being leveraged by a hack historian.
So he demanded immediate repayment of the loan, the hush money.
And to ensure compliance, he threatened to secure the debt on Avienus' most valuable asset, his mother's house.
That's an existential threat in Roman society, not just losing money, but losing the family home, potentially leaving his mother destitute.
And this demand wasn't just a polite note from Lucrio. It was backed up by serious professional muscle. The Retusii.
The Retusii were professional debt collectors.
Strongmen.
And led by a truly nasty character named Boss.
Yeah.
This is the same guy who later tried to strangle Petronius Longus, so you know they're lethal and professional.
So Avienus was murdered. hanged by the retusia after the money was collected, not just to get the debt back, but to permanently silence the blackmailer who knew too much.
The second death was professional elimination. Pure, cold-blooded calculation, not a suicide. And this brings us to Turius, the utopian poet with the terrible allergies. He confesses to Chrysippus' murder.
Even though he didn't do it, he confessed because he felt responsible for Avienus' death. It's the ultimate red herring, driven by this misplaced guilt.
Turius had his own little hustle going. He had been moonlighting as a private poetry reader to rich women,
Which Falco recognized as a gentle euphemism for a gigolo. Turius was also extorting money from Chrysippus, though he didn't know the full, dangerous dirt Avienus had discovered on the bank's origins.
And Turius, driven by greed, pushed Avienus to demand even more money from Chrysippus.
An escalation that sealed Avienus' fate. Chrysippus decided the cost of silence was too high and called in the Retusi to collect the loan and silence the historian permanently.
So Turius' psychological burden was immense. He was responsible for Avienus' death, but not the bankers.
The irony is just, it's so rich. The two deaths, one a rage-killing, one a cold-blooded silencing, were directly intertwined by Chrysippus' strategy of using high finance to control, leverage, and suppress his own literary circle.
He used money to manipulate art, and ultimately that manipulation led to two bodies.
And this leads to the wider fallout. Falco's investigation, just by happening, it generates rumors. And these rumors, combined with the visible, sweaty panic of the chief spy Anacretes.
It starts a financial rumor mill that causes a run on the bank.
Lucrio sees the writing on the wall. He immediately freezes the accounts and calls in the liquidators. The Aurelian bank collapses.
It's a textbook example of the fragility of Roman finance. It relied almost entirely on perceived stability and personal trust. A bank run was a catastrophe.
And the personal stakes were incredibly high for those who had deposited large sums, especially Anacretes, the chief spy, who had put a huge portion of his illicit funds in there.
And here's where Falco's professional case gets violently tangled up with his personal life.
His mother, Junia Tacita, had entrusted her considerable savings, a hefty sum for a working-class woman, to Anacretes,
who in turn invested them in the now collapsed Aurelian bank. This is a massive plot twist.
It is. The good news, by the grace of Lucrio's meticulous record-keeping, is that the liquidators can't touch Ma's money.
Why not?
Because she dealt with Lucrio face-to-face. This means her money was registered outside of the formal, easily recoverable accounts, which were now frozen.
Okay, but there has to be a catch.
A huge one. She has to retrieve the cash herself in person from the panicked financial agent wading right into the mess that Falco created.
Which, of course, leads to a classic Falco family drama juxtaposed against this high finance failure. We have to step back for a minute and just appreciate the family circus that's happening at the same time.
It's almost as entertaining as the murder investigation. You have Falco's father, Geminus, who is sinking into drunken grief after the death of his partner, Flora. Pa isn't just neglecting his duties, he's literally burning invoices.
A total abdication of responsibility for his lucrative auction business.
Yeah.
He's just paralyzed by loss.
Meanwhile, Falco's sister, Maya, is newly widowed and desperately needs an income to support her 4 children. Falco suggested she take up tailoring, but she resists.
And then Helena, Falco's clever wife, persuades Maya to take over Pa's auction house accounts and inventories. Flora's old job.
It's a shrewd, pragmatic move for Maya, using her organizational skills in a professional capacity.
And in contrast, you have Junia, the other sister, who's perpetually bossy and judgmental. She volunteers to run Flora's filthy capana, the tavern, herself.
So you have this clear distinction setting up in the family. Maya handles the respectable, high-status accounts, and Junia handles the low-status, high-labor tavern, which just fuels their existing rivalry.
But the drama peaks with the truly explosive Anacretes scandal. Junia, ever the busybody, starts spreading this horrible rumor.
Based on the fact that Anacretes is lodging at their mother's house.
That the chief spy is having an affair with their mother.
This slander is intolerable to Falco, and especially to Pa, who's already drinking heavily and just losing control.
This rumor drives Pa and Falco to absolutely storm the palace, demanding satisfaction from the chief spy.
And in a moment of utter drunken bravado and fury, Pa manages to deliver a tactical strike to the chief spy's ear. He punches him so hard that it swells like a cabbage leaf.
You can just picture it. Falco's father, a broken auctioneer, walking into the imperial palace and delivering a tactical strike to the chief spy's cauliflower ear. The sheer chaos of it.
It's hilarious, yes, but what's terrifying is the new threat that emerges from this humiliation. Anacrit's humiliated, bruised, defeated, having lost his money, lost his lodgings, been physically assaulted by the family. He starts pursuing Maya after she's widowed.
And this is not a social call.
Not at all. This is the chief spy leveraging state power and resources to exact personal revenge against a private family who has shamed him twice. This is a highly dangerous situation for the family.
His loss of control only makes him more sinister and unpredictable.
So now we pivot back to the murder, carrying all that heavy baggage of family chaos and imperial retaliation with us. We get to the confrontation.
Falco brings all the key players. The wives, Lucrio, the authors, the scriptorium manager Yushimon, together in the Greek library for the final interrogation.
And he throws a rug over the bloodstain. Just forces everyone to confront the reality of the crime scene while he talks.
His technique here is masterful. He systematically eliminates the primary financial suspects first.
Right. Lucrio and Lysa are cleared of the murder, though Falco suspects they were deeply complicit in Avienus's death. And Lucrio's argument for his innocence in Chrysippus' death is highly rational and compelling.
He argued that killing Chrysippus would have caused the immediate bank collapse he foresaw, something he, as co-heir and the bank's operational genius, would never have risked.
His self-interest actually cleared him. He needed Chrysippus alive, at least until the transfer of assets was secured.
Similarly, the authors, including the falsely confessed Turius, are revealed as pathetic and driven by literary jealousy, but ultimately not homicidal.
And Yusuke confirms that all of them were about to be dropped by the new management anyway. Their jealousy was about their livelihood, not a motive for murder. Falco has systematically eliminated the financial motive and the literary envy motive.
So what was left? That rage. The rage that led to the scroll rod attack and the severe battering. It had to come from the deepest, most sensitive part of Chrysippus' life.
And that's when Falco introduces a new witness to break the case. The slave who ran errands.
And the slave identifies an unexpected visitor that morning. Philomulus, the shipping magnate's son and Peppina waiter.
He was the man who had been scheduled to take another writer's place that day.
And here is the actual, highly personal, explosive motive: literary theft. Falco reveals that Chrysippus was in the process of stealing Philomelus's excellent adventure story, a truly great work, according to the sources.
And Chrysippus was meticulously preparing to publish it under his sensitive son Diomedes' name.
Why?
To boost Diomedes' social standing and reputation as an artist, thereby cementing the social contract secured through Vibia.
It's the ultimate corruption of both finance and art. He's using the prestige of stolen art to purchase social climbing.
But Diomedes, who was already sensitive, pious, and suffered from severe writer's block, he refused to agree to the scheme. He was incapable of lying about his literary achievements to advance his status.
And we learned that Diomedes had been secretly writing his own novel, a second scroll, which Helena later found.
And this manuscript was described as excellent, composed on blotty paper and luncheon receipts, written in a difficult hand and littered with alterations. It was this scroll that Chrysippus wanted to substitute or claim as Diomedes' work.
He was essentially using one stolen or fabricated manuscript after another to prop up his son's literary reputation.
And Diomedes wanted physical proof that his father was planning this profound literary theft to prove what had happened if his father went ahead and published the lie. His honor was affronted.
This wasn't a financial argument. This was a mortal conflict over integrity.
Diomedes' denial during the confrontation is broken by specific, undeniable physical evidence. Falco knew the emotional context, but he needed the hard proof.
And that proof was located in the one place Diomedes thought was safe: his old room.
As Falco confronts him, Fusculus, one of the vigils, produces the physical evidence found stuffed inside an ill-stuffed cushion from that room.
A heavily blood-stained tunic, bloody shoes.
And the dolphin-engraved finial from the scroll rod, the very weapon used to start the murder. The physical evidence just seals his fate.
So the motive was ultimately not financial power or political advancement. Nor was it the revenge of a fleeced author.
No, it was a furious, consuming rage of filial and artistic honor unleashed to prevent the theft of an excellent literary work and to protect his own sensitive conscience from the monumental lie his father planned to build his life on.
Diomedes is arrested for parricide, the killing of a parent.
Which is critical because in Rome, parricide carried the ultimate penalty, the ponacoli, the punishment of the sack.
The sack.
The convicted person would be tied up and sewn into a leather sack with an assortment of animals, a dog, a monkey, a viper, and a cock, and then thrown into the water. It wasn't just execution, it was a deeply symbolic and horrific erasure of the convicted from society.
Wow. It just highlights the absolute severity of the crime committed to protect a point of honor.
So now we shift to the aftermath, the lingering threats and the status quo that emerges from all this chaos. Falco solved the murder, preventing this monumental lie, but the domestic situation he returns to is still volatile and dangerous.
The family status quo involves Maya, now an astute businesswoman, dumping the chief spy Anacretes.
She claims he had far too many controlling plans for her future and that she was ready to dump him anyway. It's a significant moment of agency for Maya.
Anacretes is seen leaving the neighborhood, defeated and looking grim. He's lost his money, his lodgings at Ma's, and now the prospect of marrying Maya.
Monumental public and personal humiliation at the hands of this working-class family.
But Maya takes over Pa's lucrative accounts, showing a new capacity for business acumen, leading Falco to joke, maybe with a touch of protective pride, that in 10 years she'll be a top-notch antiques expert.
Fully integrated into the high-status world of auctioneering.
Yet the very final scene leaves us with a familiar sense of unease. Falco goes to Maya's house to unwind, celebrating the solved case and the family's minor victory over Anacretes.
Only for his best friend, Vigil's chief Petronius Longus, to arrive, and Petronius joins the conversation with a sneaky grin.
The implication is clear. The best friend is now subtly pursuing Falco's newly available, newly confident sister.
It creates a new layer of complicated family entanglement for Falco, a much lighter worry than the chief spy, perhaps, but a headache nonetheless. It just shows the Falco family never gets a clean break from the drama.
So what does this all mean for us, the listeners, diving into this historical drama? What's the takeaway?
I think the key lesson learned is that in Rome, high finance and high art are equally volatile worlds, and both of them breed homicidal rage.
The murder of this powerful banker was solved not by complex banking records or deciphering blackmail documents,
but by a poet's jealousy and ultimately a son's furious attempt to prevent his literary integrity from being stolen. A crime driven by a point of artistic honor. We established that the most lethal secrets in Rome weren't found in a ledger or a scroll,
but in the deepest insecurities and resentments of the human heart, especially those festering within a deeply ambitious, dysfunctional family. Chrysippus tried to buy his way into social status.
But his son rejected the purchase at the cost of his father's life and his own future.
But now that the dust is settled, Diomedes is facing the sack, and the chief spy has been humiliated and dumped by two of your family members. What does that mean for the safety of your immediate circle?
In a world where even your mother's personal affairs might become a matter of state gossip, how safe can any victory truly be?
Especially when the most dangerous, most connected man in Rome has been left with nothing but his immense power, his bruised ear, and a thirst for revenge. Something to mull over as you secure your own savings.